I got it.
Any issues with the minutes other than the mark? With A 17?
Yes, the date on that said Thursday, February 16th, and it was Thursday, March 16th.
So we will,
As amended, yes.
any first, so we've got marks and spelling and we get a change in February, March 16th. Anything else? Can I get a motion with those amendments?
I move we approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
All in favor? Couple of abstentions.
Abstain.
Yeah, Mark and Peter, anyone here? Regular business, let's see, hold on, go back to that. Yeah, regular business. Ben, take her away. And I know there were some folks that did go in and poke around in the document. I didn't look to see how much was there, but I expect we'll get there at some point during this meeting.
Yes, I think there's a few things that we want to make sure we covered this evening, and Sam has joined us as you're going through the minutes. We want to review the future land use plan, and our goal today is to go from that draft to kind of like a draft we can use in the first draft of the plan. So hopefully we can do some fine tuning and answer a few questions and get to a point where we can have some consensus about moving forward with that portion of the work. We also wanted to talk a little bit about policies and strategies, and that's what Brett was just talking about, that Google spreadsheet where folks have had an opportunity to go in and add strategies and policies for each one of the inventory chapters. And Sam sent around an example of what this is going to look like as we transition from kind of throwing a bunch of ideas at the wall to organizing these things in a way where you have clearly defined policies and strategies to support each one. So again, hopefully we'll get to a point where we can start moving that forward. That doesn't need to be finished this evening. Our hope is that we'll be able to wrap that up for all of the chapters by the end of the May meeting. But our hope again is to really spend as much time as we need to this evening when it comes to the future land use map to move that one forward. And that's the first thing on the agenda. So Sam, do you have anything, do you want me to share from my screen, or do you want to share from your own screen?
I can share from my screen.
I was not at the last meeting. Logan and Sam led the last discussion about this, so I'll let Sam continue at this point. Thanks.
Okay, so this is the map based on last meeting's discussion showing growth area around Bass Harbor, 3 transition areas, one along near Quiet Side Campgrounds, Richtown Road area, 1 transition area off Kellytown, and then a 3rd transition at Seal Cove. And so based on that, we revised the map a bit to show the following areas. And I think I'll start by saying, so this looks like a lot of change from the first one. And we definitely do have questions that we want to ask. So for starters, I think just to reiterate, future land use plan shows 3 general areas: growth areas, transition areas, and rural areas. So growth areas are going to take the most amount of new change and new development, and they could include anything new public investment such as sidewalks, community septic, bike paths, but it's really where you're going to see the most amount of change. Multifamily housing could go there as well. And transition areas are sort of like the next area down, or the next level down, where you could see some level of development, but you're not going to see really a lot of new infrastructure improvements. And then the 3rd level down from that is rural areas, where you could see, you know, a couple new houses here or there, but for the most part, the areas are going to remain undeveloped. And then the tier under rural is also critical rural, and critical rural is areas that are deserving of the greatest amount of protection from development. So they could be large blocks of habitat, critical natural resources as well. So in summary, this looks like a big change. I think starting with Kellytown Road is probably where the biggest difference is from this map to the last one. And just looking at all of this, it seems that the northern part of Kellytown looks different from the southern part of Kellytown, where there's some development happening here today. And so it's shown as a growth area because we heard people say that they want to see a lot of multifamily housing here, which might require smaller lot sizes, other infrastructure like community septic. So we're treating the southern end of Kellytown differently from the northern end, which appears to be more rural. And then a transition area is shown connecting the two growth areas. So the Bass Harbor growth area we heard last time was wanting to be majority business, but you could see some housing as well. And then Kellytown majority housing. So the pink transition would provide maybe a connection from one growth to the other. The last major change is the Seal Cove area up here. It's pretty rural today. It was shown transition last time. And so the question with that is really how much development you want to see here. There's not a lot right now. It's mostly houses. And so in this case, we're keeping it as rural, which would be more like status quo. So you might not see much change, but you could still see a few new houses here or there. So I know that's a lot, and it looks like a lot of change from the last time. I think we really want to ask, I'll turn it over to Ben if you have anything to add, but I was gonna ask some questions first.
I think we do have some questions that we want to get some clarification on, and just again kind of continue to fine tune this. I think that in the discussions we've had with the committee and the feedback we've received from folks in the public meetings and the survey, our sense, I think the public sense is that the area around Bass Harbor and Bernard that's where the action is today. In this time frame of this plan, in the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, that's going to continue to be the center of jobs, activity, commerce, social life for the community. That's really what that growth area is meant to convey. There's some constraints as far as septic capacity, water quality today. Those would need to be addressed to see a lot of new, especially residential development. But I think from the standpoint of where the energy, where the activity are going to be, it's important to show that area continue to be as a growth area. And then to elaborate a little bit on what Sam had said about Kellytown Road, when we talk about new housing, affordable housing, places for not the big mansions or the summer people, normal people who are going to live year round in Tremont, we kind of honed in from this larger, more diffuse transition area to a more concentrated area around that intersection, so that really to challenge the group to think a little bit more about what kind of infrastructure might be required as far as sidewalks, bike lanes. If you're going to see 2, 3, maybe 4 unit buildings in town in the next 10 or 15 years, where are those going to go? Internally, Sam and I were talking in the office, we're probably not going to see them evenly distributed evenly distributed along the length of Kellytown Road or along the length of Route 102, but maybe more in the area where it seems a little more busy today. It's likely to become more busy, and that's what we're trying to show in that growth area. And finally, that transition area, Sam was talking about connecting them. The land use pattern, I think, isn't really meant to be more intense or less intense in the future than it is today. But we wanted to make sure we were designating something here so that when the town has conversations with DOT in the future, when the town has conversations with the Island Explorer, that we're talking about, these are the places where bike lanes, sidewalks, off-street trail connections would be most beneficial to the community. We've talked about those kinds of improvements, the length of 102, but I think in the next 10 or 15 years, the area that's generally on the screen right now, these orange growth areas and that area in between are likely to be the biggest impact, the most value to the community when it comes to that kind of on-street infrastructure. So that's why we've shown that the way it is here. So happy to talk a little bit more about that, but I think our vision, tying this map to the vision statement about finding a place for year-round activity, hearing the public talk about, where is the farmer's market going to be, a place to, meet neighbors. It's likely to be in this part of town. And interested to hear your thoughts on these things, or if you had questions about other parts of the map as well. Just initial reactions, and then maybe we can get into some of the questions that Sam and I had talked about earlier. Does that make sense to folks? Any thoughts or concerns with the vision as it's shaping up?
I have a question. Why just that lower end or that one end of the Kellytown? Why did you focus on that?
We shrunk down the area quite a bit, mostly because from looking at the map, it seems like the southern area has more development occurring right now than the northern end, which appears to be more rural. So a question we have is really, should we treat all of Kellytown Road the same, or is one part gonna take more development than the other?
Well, what you have outlined there is a large campground, and that's not going to be developed with houses.
Most that interior area, you mean?
Yeah, but it's only part of the big growth projects, and they'll be, it's not there yet. Right. But
It will be.
I know, but that's growth. Yeah.
Also on Upper Kellytown, there's 2 significant wetlands that are on the FEMA maps.
Way up there. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
one way
Yeah.
up, there's one,
Mhm.
right at the bend.
What's on the FEMA map?
Near
you.
I think it is. It's between me and the orange development.
That's by
Is it?
Macari's the
Eric,
truck and
it's
excavation place. The new.
No, the car space.
What's that?
It's,
What's
yeah,
in
but
the
it
park?
goes into the park. It,
Oh, by the Woodland Road.
Yeah, just south of it.
Yeah.
And
I think
then,
that's a FEMA. I think that's a.
It's not that large. It's not-
I remember we did a subdivision amendment up in that area. There were some wetlands up in there, but yeah, they weren't large.
So any of the designations here, of course, would be subject to any of the local issues. I do have a question. I just want to clarify. I recall, we have these once a month, so I'm kind of like trying to remember what we did last month. But I recall sort of doing this exercise where we kind of colored this.
Yeah.
Is this where we ended up?
No.
So this is.
No,
this is-
I don't think so.
You weren't here, I don't think, last week.
Yeah, so
No.
Yeah, can we bring up the other one, Sam?
yeah, so
that's
This is-
what we had.
Yeah.
right there.
Okay, so I'm just curious, what's the basis of the changes from that to what you're showing us now? Maybe I missed that.
Good point.
So when I look at this map, I wasn't at the last meeting either, but I got debriefed on the last meeting and saw this version of the map. And when I think of growth and rural and transition, it's really, growth areas are the place you want to encourage and incentivize growth. Those are going to be the places with energy, activity, people walking around after work. Rural areas are the places you want to discourage and disincentivize. That might be, places where you see larger lot sizes or frontage requirements. It doesn't mean there would be no growth in rural parts of Tremont, but you're going to actively protect those areas that are not colored orange or pink from the impacts of growth, so that you can maintain the rural character, rural economy of those places. And then the pink areas are kind of in between, where you might have some development today, but it's certainly not a place where the community is going to be looking to locate new infrastructure. Like you might not see sidewalks or bike lanes or the new community center or the new kind of town amenities in those areas. Those are generally, most of those, I think the statute says 75% of town's investment in those kinds of things should be happening in the growth areas. So the transition areas end up being the places where you're not really protecting from the impacts of development, because there might already be some development today, and they're not the places you're really encouraging new development and activity and new housing, for example. They're just kind of the places in between, right? So most of the town is either going to be rural or growth, and oftentimes, there's no rule of thumb, but most of the time, you'll have a relatively small area of growth, or maybe 2 or 3 areas for growth, a bunch of rural, and then kind of the other pieces that don't really fit into either one very well end up being transition areas. So when I looked at this map, number one, it struck me that there was a lot of transition areas, and maybe that just, to Tremont, this is one of our questions, is that kind of like where you want to see some growth continue, but maybe slower, lower density, single family houses on dead end roads, as opposed to 2 and 3 unit buildings, and places where you maybe have narrow roads or a 2-foot shoulder on the side, as opposed to a place where you'd see a sidewalk, for example. Or are those the places that you really would expect to see, more people, the future residents of Tremont who are going to be living in town year round? I remember having this conversation a few times with the committee, are likely to be on the east side of 102, likely to be on Kellytown Road or some of the roads off of Kellytown Road. So it's really a matter of, I think, degree. To figure out what those pink areas mean. And maybe it's partly because I wasn't at the last meeting, but it's also partly, when we look at that area of pink, which essentially goes from Bernard up to where it says Hodgson Seafood, that's quite a distance of low density designated area, and I wanted to make sure that we had a conversation about, is this going to turn into like road in Trenton on the way to Mount Desert Island, where you have a lot of low density, kind of 1 lot deep off of the road, and that becomes the character of the roadway after a certain amount of development takes place? Or is it going to be more about, you want some activity in a few specific places with those stretches of maybe rural highway between them? So I think when I see this much transition zone kind of all together along the road, it kind of begs that question of, what is the, what are we envisioning for that part of town?
Okay. In other words, we didn't do it right.
Right, yep.
Well, I wanted to, the way I put it before is I wanted to challenge you to, what is the difference maybe a little bit today, but what is the difference going to be 10 years from now when you go for a walk or go for a drive between the more southerly portion of Kellytown Road and the northerly portion of Kellytown Road where it meets 102? Are they going to be generally the same, or could they be significantly different?
So I'll just lay out my thinking, I think, as I recall from a month ago when we were looking at this. At least from my perspective, I think what I was thinking when we made this pink was that would be the area where we transition from kind of what it is now to probably an area of more growth and more housing, more development. Now, whether that whole thing transitions to orange, I don't know, but I think that's what we're getting at, right? Ben is like, I think we all agree that area was an area where we expected to see growth. As to the intensity of that growth, I guess when I was thinking transition, I was like, okay, yes, it's going to transition from kind of what it is now, which is probably really mostly rural, to something more dense. And so that's why we called it a transition. Whether it transitions all the way to orange, I think that's what we're here to talk about now.
I picture orange as like restaurants and, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's what
I picture orange as, and that's why I thought we did that area for, you know, like heavier residential growth than most areas.
Yeah, I frankly thought it was more residential growth and business type growth up in that area.
Well, pretty much what it is now, small business, you know, home occupation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think if there's gonna be affordable workforce type housing,
That's where it'll be.
that's where it's gonna be.
Right.
Yeah, Kellytown generally. I mean, there'll be some scattered, but the majority of new housing for people that are working for a living in Tremont's gonna be there.
Would you, is there a difference between the north and the south part of the Kellytown neighborhood?
I think Sarah nailed it. It's more wetland than the most part. I think that's
It's,
a difference.
it's less congested though up there. I mean, there
Well,
are
that's
fewer homes up there.
Yeah, but there's a lot of wetlands. Yeah, it's pretty live up there. Wetland, I think it's pretty easy.
There's some homes back, there are little communities back in like the Gap Road, I mean, there's some family communities back in there where there's in the upper part.
How many places are on your road now?
30.
Okay, so not many. Yeah.
And I mean, I expect that.
But there's other lots.
Evenly,
Yeah.
you know, throughout Kellytown and around 102, but I would really think that it's gonna evenly grow.
Yeah,
From kind of what it's doing now.
yeah, and like I say, it looks less dense, I think, on the northern part. But if you eliminate the areas that are wetland, I don't think it's much less dense.
Okay.
You know,
Gotcha.
For the orange designation, what's the upper end of the type of development you're talking
Yeah.
about? I mean, are we talking like McDonald's? Like when you, Ben, like what is orange?
Walmart.
Like what is
Yeah.
it?
A growth area in Tremont is not going to look like a growth area in Bangor or a growth area in Brunswick. It's all relative, right? So that it's really up to each community to describe and locate these areas where, you know, the growth areas where most of the new housing and business activity should be taking place in the next 10 or 15 years. And the rural areas, again, those are not no growth areas, but those should see a lot less. So I think what I'm hearing is like, are you going to be just as likely to see a 2 or 3 unit building anywhere along that kind of Kellytown loop?
I think that's right. I mean, I think that it's probably all orange, but I think that, and I think the reason people are hesitant because it's orange, but like, we're not gonna have a Hobby Lobby. Like, there's not gonna be like, it's not gonna be, it's gonna be Tremont orange. It's not gonna be Bangor orange.
Right.
That transition period that they had on the next map in between the two spots is probably still fairly accurate.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if we're gonna do some road improvements or whatever to connect those spots.
So I think, yeah, go ahead. Didn't mean to cut you off.
I think I would throw out there that orange blob at the southern end would, you know, color in whole kind of area there around Kellytown.
Where the pink is on the last map.
Yeah,
And I think I heard someone say, it just based on the current land use, like that really may not be big enough. It's really not going to take most of, like you maybe need that extra space on the northern end. So I think that's fair. And I do feel like, Sam, I'm interested in your thoughts on this, but like the degree, I think that the narrative that goes along with this mapping work is going to help tell the story. And like someone said, this isn't, Hobby Lobby and McDonald's. It's, some in scale new housing development. It's maybe a small convenience store or some kind of like bakery or pizza place that would, serve the folks who are living in the area, kind of consistent with, the quiet side atmosphere of the community today.
So now it's all business residential, right? That's how this growth has become, of what it is now. We have the issue with what the business is gonna be, is it the industrial thing and all that, which is gonna be decided at some point, I would say, and that's gonna determine how big the businesses are.
Right,
The definition, which is a ongoing work, right?
residential,
Yeah.
and that'll happen. I mean, that's what's being worked on.
Yeah, it might take a while, but I know it's being worked on.
But is that the purpose of our plan, to make those recommendations? Not to decide the ordinances, but to make the recommendations.
Right, just to say, this is what the information that we gathered points to.
But I think it's important to know what it was and how it got to where it is now, because of that zoning. Yeah,
Well, as I understand it, the business part is not well defined,
right, that's what I was talking about, business
and that has caused some concerns among people in the community.
Well, part of the
The,
problem.
the ordinance basically reads light business and there's no, or light commercial. And there's no real definition for that. And certainly a light commercial in Bangor, it would be much different than light commercial on the Kellytown Road here in Tremont.
And the other issue with it is says all use is permitted.
Yeah, I mean, you could have all kinds of things going on
You
here.
can have a Walmart,
Um,
according to all uses.
no, you can have that. I mean,
I know
obviously,
we wouldn't, but.
yeah.
There's-
It also
there's
lists what
building
you
stuff.
can do. There are certain things that are specifically permitted, campgrounds actually is one of them, and then other things like that, but. Yeah.
so the business residential now stops at the Dow Point Road. And how about at the end of the north end of Kellytown Road, does it go all the way through there?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
You bring up A again, Sam?
Is that?
yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
In that yellow, I'm assuming must be that wetland, then, that available blob, I think.
Yeah, that's wetland. Yeah, there is a big wetland there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not.
That's
quite-
Murphy Swamp, okay,
Yeah,
there, on here.
and that goes right into Kellytown, yeah.
So that
Yeah,
being.
so those kinds of local conditions, the wetlands, steep slopes, it's totally fine to have.
Right, because it'll be addressed in the.
Exactly, right. And I think that was one thing, working in another community recently where they, it's like, look, we can't call this a growth area because there's an important park that is part of this area. And I'm like, well, you can have parks in built up parts of town. It's an important amenity to have green space in your communities and in the downtown village areas. But the way I started to think about it is, where are you going to be able to tell DOT that they need to put a wide shoulder or a sidewalk, or where are you going to tell the person who wants to come in and do, 6 or 8 units in a couple buildings? Where is that going to be appropriate in town? And I think I'm hearing some consensus around the table that it could happen anywhere in this area. Right. And from that standpoint, it meets the definition of a growth area, but a Tremont growth area is gonna have a certain character and scale that, won't look like the main mall, or it won't look like, Route 1 and Brewer kind of thing.
That's right.
Or not Route 1 and Brewer, but, Center Street and Brewer.
Route 1 anywhere.
Yes, right. So that makes sense. Is that enough definition, Sam? I think that is definitely helpful for me.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I think that addresses some of the questions we had about that transition area as well. Do we want to talk more about like the northern part of town?
Yeah, so Seal Cove. So last time this was a transition area. The updated map is keeping it as rural, just because it looks that way today. So what is the like vision for this area? Are you envisioning like lot by lot,
Is it like
single
Kellytown
family?
Road?
Yeah. How is this? How should this area be treated?
Less than the Kellytown Road, but more than regular rural, I don't know.
There's a community up there. Isn't there kind of a little
Oh, yeah.
village
There's roads
area?
going on.
Yeah,
Is there, you know, at that?
yeah, I'm not sure I would call it around Cape.
I think there was a very early version of, I think one of the first versions that had some transition area centered on the intersection, just north of where the screen is now. At that point, I'm pointing to my screen, where Long Pond, where the marker is right there.
Yeah,
And it looks like, you know, there's some environmental constraints there as well. But the transition area that we originally had was kind of coming out of that intersection toward the southwest and south. And it was really kind of tight with the road and along the road, so that there was a big like space in the middle. Like I think maybe a little that way, Sam, but I was thinking south of there as well. And it almost looked like a pair of pants. There were like two legs coming down, and I think in the version A that you guys looked at last month, it was almost like a big triangle, right? And that's what we had up on the screen a moment ago. So it kind of included more of that area between 102 and the road that goes to the southwest. I forget the name and I can't see the name of it right now. So if that internal area is to be included, kind of like maybe even lower intensity than Kellytown Road, maybe that is appropriate to be a transition area. It is, meaning it's not an area that you would, you know, protect from development or kind of shield from the impacts of development. You wouldn't, you know, necessarily increase lot sizes or make it so that people could, you know, do less things on their property there. But it's not going to be where you focus, you know, more housing, more infrastructure, more transportation stuff. And that would be a transition area.
yeah, I think that sounds right. There's quite a bit of land in there that's available. There's several mobile homes. It's not, you know, super high end price property, north end of Cape Road.
You know, until you get on the shore.
Yeah, but I mean, and then it turns to dirt down there a little bit. So I mean, there's an area in there that has got some potential for growth, but again, it's probably not going to grow like I see Kellytown Road.
Yeah. Lots of times I describe transition areas as status quo. Like it's not going to be a focus of growth, but you just kind of let it go, keep doing what it's doing. Rural is not supposed to be status quo. That's supposed to be enhanced protections, less development. And if it feels like this is more status quo, you know, this area wasn't really called out as an important rural space. There wasn't like habitat blocks or those kinds of things. There's a lot of roads and there are a lot of houses along these roads, but I think I heard some pretty good agreement in the room just a moment ago that maybe that area we had in map A, if you could bring that up, Sam, is kind of like an appropriate place to just kind of let things happen the way they're happening.
I'd agree with that.
That feels good to me.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good.
Especially if the Kellytown block turns orange, so that the Kellytown is a step more different than the Cape Road triangle.
Well, yeah, there's a balance, right? You don't want to have like so much of your town be a growth area that you can't make focused investments and tell people, you know, this is really where these kinds of activities should be, because that's going to make our town better. You know, you just end up with like this undifferentiated, patternless development that has a tendency to turn into, on main roads, that kind of commercial strip development, and on country roads, a lot of dead end streets that don't connect to anything, and you have limited habitat values, degraded resource values at that point. So I think from our perspective, you know, we don't want to go too far with the growth areas, but at the same time, that large swath of transition zone was something we wanted to just kind of see if we could clarify a little bit, which has been helpful. I think this is good. So with those changes, you know, we're putting together the narrative that goes with this, and as we'll talk about in the agenda, we're getting ready to put a first draft of the plan together, and kind of take all these pieces and put them together. And I think, as I said at the beginning, we want to get to a point where it, you know, it may not be the final word. There probably will be some fine tuning to do when people see this more broadly, when you've had a chance to kind of read the narrative that goes with the mapping. But it feels to me like we're getting pretty close to some consensus on, okay, this map with the changes we've discussed would be a fine place to have that next conversation launch from. Is that the sense in the room?
It is, yes, thank you, Ben.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Good. Anything else, Sam? I think this was a great discussion. I really appreciate you having those layers up that we could turn on and off and kind of compare the two. Cool. So I've got the agenda on my other screen.
Yeah.
Oh, now I can see your faces better. Is there any, was that the end of the land use discussion?
I think so, yeah, and then we would move on. I've got policies, goals, strategies, so we're looking at the Google Doc, I think, or is that where we're moving to?
Yeah, so we had set up this Google sheet where essentially the way I was describing it was the, you know, the laundry list. We were coming up with a whole bunch of goals and policies for each chapter, which was its own tab in that spreadsheet. And we're now again at the point in the process where we're going to go from the laundry list, or as I told Sam earlier, it's like the spaghetti at the wall phase, and starting to organize these things around concepts and making sure that goals have a couple strategies. And if we have a whole bunch of strategies with no clear goal, let's figure out what these strategies are supporting. So we want to share an example, and I think Sam had sent this out Monday or Tuesday for the transportation chapter so far. Let me see, we've got that Google spreadsheet up. And I want to see if it makes sense to share that up, or where we're going to share that PDF, Sam.
So I think they organized Goals and policies are also in the Google Doc. So if you share the Google Doc, you should just get everything.
Yeah, they are, it's the first tab.
Yep. All right, let me share that up. So what we are going to be doing, and we did this for the transportation tab only at this point, was to take a list of goals and policies that looked like this, where we had one column of color-coded state requirements and local requirements. And we've started to break those down in a way that organizes those strategies and associates them with each policy, but also does it in a way that leaves a little room on the side for talking about who in the organization, whether it's town staff or volunteers, partner organizations, will be necessary to help make some of this stuff happen. Talk about whether it's something that should be happening in the short term, like immediately or in the next couple years, versus longer term. And we added a column E over here that takes the place of the color coding. So we could get some of the responsible party and time frame work into this. Column E, where it says state requirement or local, it's really more of like a working column now, so that this group can say, you know, this goal, it's happened a lot where, you know, someone says, nobody has ever talked about subdivision standards for public and private roads at any point in this whole process. And we can say, yes, that's could very well be true, but it needs to be in here because that's one of the state strategies that's in the checklist. And we need to make it easy for the folks who review this in Augusta to check that box. A lot of our focus is going to be, once we get this work done, trying to understand what are the local policies and strategies that we need to prioritize that town has control over to start moving the town toward different aspects of that vision statement. So we had a line for policy, and we're proposing to number each of these and then have subsequent strategies numbered accordingly that fall under each one. For example, this one, I don't know if you can read it from where you're sitting, but create a safe bicycle network for recreation and commuting. This is one of the ones we heard early in the visioning. We heard it a lot in the survey, and it was actually one of the things from the last comp plan we heard about, and I think we've talked about it from the beginning. So there are some strategies associated with that. So it is, you know, sidewalks and bike lanes are a strategy toward making that policy happen, but there's also other strategies that the town could pursue based on budget, based on timing, and those should all be on the table as part of outlining this. So the next one's increase bus ridership for residents and visitors. That's a local policy, and there's a couple strategies associated with that as well. So this was sent out ahead of time. I could read the whole thing if you wanted to go through it line by line, but it's essentially the process we're going to be going through as we go from this kind of work to thinking more about how do we organize this to present it in the plan that'll be a little more clear, a little more actionable. The next step after this, where you go from the laundry list to an organized list, is a prioritized list. And that's where we want to start connecting the dots, connecting the threads between some of those goals and strategies that are important for the transportation goals, but maybe they're also important for economy and housing goals as well. So when you can find some of those policies and strategies, those are generally the things that are going to start to rise to the top. And we'll want to emphasize those more as we get into the actual planning document itself. So that's where we are, and that's where we're going. And we've been talking about, we've had this open for a couple months now, and we want to get to a point very soon. And we would like to propose next week is that time where the laundry list phase of this work is over, and we can, in the office here, really dig into putting this into that organized list that we can start to connect some of those dots and find those higher priorities items at the next meeting. So that's where we are. Any questions about this sheet that's up on the screen right now? What we're sharing with this group and how we got from tab 10 to this other format?
Yeah, no, so I haven't actually gone through the entire sheet, but I take it by the fact that you're raising this, that they're not done. Like when you go in and look at the document, you're not seeing that it's all complete, or the people have taken a stab at it, or I haven't done it. Is that fair?
Yeah,
or?
yeah, a lot of people have been in there. I don't know that I could go in and say, here's the people who've done their homework and here's the people who haven't. But I know that
Yeah.
I know that there had been some talk over the last couple meetings about, do individuals just want to go in and kind of go through all the tabs and make sure that their ideas are on there? Or is it going to be up to each person who is most involved with each chapter to kind of go in and be the person who makes sure that there's some things covered there? We will.
Also,
go ahead.
At the meeting, Ben, where we actually did assign people to areas, like each person had, I think, a couple. So I think over the next week, what we'll do is redouble our efforts to make sure that the folks who were assigned do that, and then everyone else also should just spend a half hour, an hour, and just tab through and read through things, and if they see anything they want to add, just do it, and fill out.
Even the chapters
Even the chapters, everyone should now just take over the next, people that were assigned chapters, do that. Kevin, I know you did, I did a little bit too.
Yeah.
And then over the next week, all of us should just kind of take a peek at what everyone else has done and just read down through it and just add what you think we should. It's pretty easy to do, actually. When I went and
Yeah, it looked like there was quite a bit of information you put in.
And there is, yeah, I'm just kind of looking at a couple from there, and there's some that there isn't, and there's some, I'm guilty as well of one of them that we could probably add more, and so we'll just try to wrap it up over the next week. I think is what I'm hearing, right, Ben? Yeah? Yeah.
That's good.
One of the things I was looking at, I wasn't quite sure how we're doing it. I mean, it seems like it's a little, I don't know, maybe overstepping the bounds, possibly putting down categories for the entire group. I'd like the idea.
Well, we
If you
all
think, yeah, I was gonna say, you think the way to do it is just, if you see comments you think are appropriate, add them.
That's right.
And we'll sort it out later.
That's what,
Yeah.
that's okay. Yes.
That was the confusion I had with it too.
Yep.
Yep.
Confusion.
So the work that we did was, sometimes there were 2 or 3 ideas, and this was a local. The one I'm thinking of is a local goal and a local strategy and a state strategy were virtually the same. And we combine those into a single strategy. So we don't want to, as North Star staff, to just throw ideas out and say, oh, that's a horrible idea. That one will never work. That one is too expensive or it takes too long. We want to organize all of them so that, that's the work of the committee to kind of sort through the ones that make sense. And then are there things we can combine? Are there things where maybe someone put it down as a strategy for marine resources, but maybe it's also a natural resources strategy as well. So there will be opportunities to kind of vet the work, and we don't want to lose things in the organizational process, right? but we want to make it easier for people to kind of look through and sort through, so you don't have, 12 different tabs. We're going to try and put it all into one sheet that people can read from top to bottom and go from there.
Okay.
Just a question about the white sheet. Do you want us to transfer this to the white sheet? No.
I don't think you need to do that.
Yeah.
Our decision is that, right, so if you had a specific tab that you were going to make those comments under, go ahead and do that, and we'll kind of put everything together for folks to react to before the next meeting. I think that one of the questions that we wanted to kind of make a decision on tonight was, how long before we kind of close the open-ended laundry list creation and start organizing these things, knowing that if there's gaps or things that aren't covered, we can still add those later. But I think at a certain point, we're going to need to kind of close the window and just organize the work so that the document's not changing while we're trying to organize things. We were talking about, give you guys the weekend and then on Monday we'll close it. But I'm not sure now that I'm saying it out loud that that would be enough time.
No, that's not feasible. If I could, can we do it the following Monday, not this coming Monday, but the next Monday? Because this is also spring break and I haven't done anything with my children. So.
You're running out of time.
I know. So if we went with like the May 1st, is that a Monday?
And so, I'm just gonna push back a little bit, Ben, so I understand. So we wouldn't keep it open until the next meeting because you need time to work and do your work. So the midpoint between this meeting and the next meeting would be 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Or next Monday or whatever. So
Yeah.
so what's today, Thursday?
Today's Thursday, so we give it to that Monday, May 1st. That gives us 2 weekends. That gives us like 2 weekends.
Then one, okay.
Yeah.
How about the rest of the month? We get the rest of the month.
That would give us just over like a week and a half to do our work, which feels about right, before we have packets for the next meeting on May 18th. So I think if we can all agree on May 1st to have those comments in, that would be great.
Okay.
Cool. Right, Sam?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. It's a week, it's an extra week for comments, but I think that extra time would be good. It needs to take the time it needs to take, but we are definitely doing our best to work toward having that at least the skeleton of a first draft for you to look at the next meeting, knowing the narrative for the future land use map needs some work. This work will still be in progress at that point, but you'll have a sense of how everything's going to kind of hang together and relate to other elements of the plan. Cool. Okay. So let's see.
This is the furthest we've gotten on the agenda.
Was there anything else with those goals and policies? Did you want to look at specific tabs, or Sam, am I forgetting anything that we talked about?
No, I think that's most of it. I guess one thing to add is going through the doc, I was noticing that there were goals and strategies were interchangeable. So like some tabs only had all strategies, some tabs only had all goals. So goals are really like generally what you want to accomplish, and a strategy is sort of the action that's going to take to accomplish the goal. So I would just, when you're adding stuff, kind of make sure those are separated. But that's the only thing to add.
Yeah, I'll bring this up again real quick.
Yeah, just so I can give an example.
So I think what you're talking about, Sam, is You know, we've got one column here in the existing tab 10 for transportation where, you know, everything is kind of in this one column. And what we're starting to do is break this out. So we've got the things we want to do and how we're going to do them, or options, or different ways you could consider accomplishing those things. It's not uncommon, as Sam said, to like, in the process of just getting things on there, you know, those often end up being interchangeable or on the same list. You know, you can definitely take a stab at it. You know, if that organizational structure makes sense, you know, policies are the things you want to have happen. Those are the outcomes, and the strategies are the things that some one person or some group of people are going to do. Those are the things you're going to make happen in order to get those outcomes. So that's part of our work, is kind of separating those out. If you can start to organize those things, like natural resources, they're organized policies and strategies. If you can see this on my screen, what we're starting to do is making sure that, you know, it's clear which of these strategies are supporting which of these policies. And if you go in here and do some work and you label something a policy, but it's really strategy, or vice versa, that's fine. I think the most important thing at this point is getting all of that on the table. And then we can sort through the work in between May 1st and when packets go out for the next meeting, to have it look a little more like this, where we can talk about, you know, these are the things we want to do, and are there any other ways that we might make those things happen? So it'd be helpful. I think that was Sam's point, if you could start thinking about things that way. But that's really going to be part of the work we do between now and then.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Thanks, Sam.
All right, so I know that one of the other things here on the agenda is we wanted to preview the final plan design, and we've organized a table of contents to share with you, and the mapping is generally done, with the exception of the future land use map we just talked about needs to be finalized for the draft version of the plan. The inventory chapters are generally done. Those were reviewed over the course of a couple meetings, and we've gotten some comments coming in from folks in the last week or so, as people continue to look at these chapters. And I think maybe there's some new committee members who missed the opportunity to review this work in December, and now they're going back in and making some good suggestions that I think that we can incorporate. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well, but I know there were a few things here we wanted to cover and just share with you at this point, get some high level feedback, and the next time you see this, it'll all be hanging together a little bit more as a document. Did you want to do some screen sharing?
Sure. I was wondering, has everybody had the chance to see the table of contents that got sent out last week? It kind of gives an outline of the plan and where we're going with this. Sort of lays out future land use, or introduction, future land use. I can share my screen as well. But this is really the outline of what the plan is going to look like. And so most of these are almost done or in process. There's maybe one or two that haven't been started yet, like performance measures. But visioning, we have public process. This list of priority actions is going to be taken out of the goals and policies of whatever rises to the top as most important for the town. And then the appendices are all the inventories, as well as the public process and survey results. So it gives you a sense of really how this is all gonna come together. And we're definitely getting there. We're just kind of tying some ends together, and polishing up the future land use, which is a big part of the plan. And then I can also show how the inventories are looking. So can everybody see this map? Or do I need to reshare?
Nope, that works.
Okay. Yeah, so this is an example of one of the maps placed in the inventories. So these are for the most part formatted. We're gonna we've received a few more comments on the inventories as well, which we'll work to include. But generally this is the layout of how it's gonna look. And I can even scroll down and show some more maps as well that are embedded in the pages of the chapters.
So basically the Word version of these that people had been reviewing has been incorporated into this Adobe format.
Yeah, InDesign, yeah.
Yep, and we're down to the point of like layout and margin, and you can start to see there's a theme for the colors and those things, so that the final document production is happening. And I think that you can kind of see that with the way the chapters are titled, the way things are spaced out. So it's an exciting part of the project where you can kind of see all of the draft work, and it's being turned into a format where it looks like a really solid draft as opposed to being a very drafty kind of work in process. So I'm excited about this part of the work. I don't know, Sam, maybe we want to like zoom out a little bit and do more of like full page view, just so people can get a sense of like the layout and how it all kind of hangs together. But the inventories are the biggest part of the plan page-wise. And as we said, these are the existing conditions. They're the kind of how we got to where we are now. And the forward-looking part of the plan that's going to be sitting on top of this, if you think back to the table of contents or flip back to the table of contents, the forward-looking part of the plan is everything, from the comp plan 2023 down to the appendices. Those will be formatted similarly, and probably be somewhere on the order of like 25, 35 pages that kind of sit on the top. So most people are going to probably engage with that part of the plan. So it's something that will be very shareable on the website, small enough to print out if you need to have a printout of that. But then, the full appendices and everything else will be available as well. I think as we get a little closer to end of June timeframe, we can talk more about, should this all be presented as one document, or should it, we be separating out the forward-looking part of the plan from the inventory chapter work. How do the maps get presented? But our current goal right now is to produce a document with all of those elements included, and the appendix work, those inventory chapters, is well underway. And that kind of brings us to one of the points we wanted to make is with the comments that have been coming in. Any comments from this point forward would be most useful, easiest for us to incorporate if they were either notes in an email that said, you know, on page 3, second paragraph, please add this wording, or if it was in the document itself as a track change, as opposed to, I saw a chapter come in, I can't remember who sent it, but it was basically copied and pasted and then some updates, and then it was sent back. And it's difficult to like figure out where the changes were without going line by line through the 2 chapters. So if there's any other you know, changes as we kind of move into this production phase with the inventory chapters, it'd be most useful if they were track changes or as, you know, specific lines or specific call outs, so that we can know where those are and what needs to be added, as opposed to, you know, a point right now where we've got a fully formatted chapter that's a good solid first draft, and then having to kind of go back through and reorganize the charts and tables and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yep. Definitely.
Yes.
The other thing that folks here in the office wanted to make sure we mentioned, Sam, was photos. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes. Yeah, so there was an email blast that got sent out a couple weeks ago, just reminding people to send in their photos, any photos of town or scenic areas, because we're looking to kind of, what's the word, beautify the plan a bit. And we've been using the same couple photos of Bass Harbor headlights. So if anybody has more photos, feel free to share them with us, email them directly to myself or Ben.
All my pictures belong to Ellsworth American Ink.
Thank you, Sam.
That's a great.
The murmuring you're hearing is us checking our emails. I was thinking anyone actually received that email. You did you? Oh.
And you said
Yeah, that's a good.
there was like a follow-up that said if you're part of another task force or something too with that.
You got a message for Augusta.
Yeah, that, yeah.
You got a
there's
message
stuff
for
there.
Augusta.
Oh, yeah.
No, I have to say, I saw it on Bar Harbor Potter as well.
I was gonna say, I think I saw on Facebook. I saw
In any event, thank you. We will get pictures back to you. Thank you.
Do you want people in these or just scenic views? Cause I could do some good hiking pictures with my dog, you know?
Oh, you want to get your dog in it, you know?
Yeah.
You must not have kids.
The dog.
I love having pictures of people. Those kinds of things are often best when they're submitted by people, and so you don't have to worry about like who it is or getting permission to have a picture of a kid in there or something like that. If someone submits it and says, hey, this would be, if you wanted to put this in the plan, that would be great, and we can consider doing that. I think that you didn't see a lot of photos in the inventory chapters that we've been going through, because the ones we do have, we want to save for that future looking part of the plan, the one that we think most of the people in town are going to engage with. If you've got 5 or 10 minutes to skim through the comp plan, that's the part that people are going to spend time with. So we want to make sure that that's engaging and clear and you know, something that people want to walk through. The other 150, 200 pages are probably going to be the things that you know, only the most dedicated volunteers and elected officials will be spending time with. So
I know a good source for the picture of the town is the town reports, the past town reports. There's always a picture on the front. Past 30 years, I think. Yeah. And there's 1 or 2 inside too.
yeah, I'll check in with Jesse on that. So yeah, pictures of people, activities, scenic photos are great, but photos of people doing fun things in town is also great.
I have a couple pictures of them.
You probably don't need that many. How many do you want approximately?
It's gonna be a collection tomorrow.
Yeah, I think the more the merrier.
Everybody's sending a million photos, we're gonna have to go through them.
We may only have enough room to put in a few dozen, or a dozen. I don't know. I wasn't given those instructions to make sure we get X number of pictures. That it was just more like grab me by the shirt collar and say, we need photos. So that's kind of the message for tonight. We'd rather have more than not enough.
Do you care if they're like small, you know, when you send it by email, so I was asking size, is that for clarity of picture? What would you prefer?
Large.
Okay.
Should get pictures.
Then I have to Google Drive folder. You put them in your Google Drive and send the folder to them. That's what I usually do.
Yeah, thank you.
We definitely need a group picture or like keep grabbing.
Oh, yeah.
With our assault weapons.
So
Yeah.
anything else with the draft plan? Any feedback on
Schedule the next
on it?
meeting.
Continue to push forward?
I think, are we good?
Yeah.
I think we've got our homework, so, motion to schedule next meeting on May 18th.
Motion to schedule our next meeting for May 18th, 5:30, right here in the town office meeting room.
All in favor?
You guys see the
And we're done, sorry.
Yeah, we adjourned, sorry.
Let's
all
go.
right.
You have to reopen the meeting.
What did you say? I'm sorry, we missed, we may have missed you.
I didn't know if you guys could see the video. It looks like you guys are in like a 80s MTV
Oh, yeah, we're
video.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I kept seeing that, yeah, and it's like, what's going on?
little Max Headroom action happening.
It's actually fine.
It's like hit the rabbit ears.
Well, thank you.
And
Thank you.
Enjoy your evening.
Good night.